Hello, everyone. It is a gorgeous Friday in Southern Oregon. I hope you all are doing really well today. Let's see, today is Friday, April 28th, right around the corner from May Day. My name is Miri Pizann, and I am coming to you live from the League of Gluten-Free Adventurers, and I am so happy to be here with you today. It is an absolute joy to be a part of this community, and I am so honored and grateful that I get to be here and work with you, because this is truly something special for me. So let me see, just to introduce myself to anyone who has not met me already. My name is Miri Pizann. I am a gluten-free coach. I have been gluten-free for about a decade at this point. I remember what it was like, however, when I felt like the only safe thing that there was for me to eat was ice cubes and maybe some raw lettuce. You know, you can't even have the salad dressing because there might be gluten in that, and forget about croutons. But I've gotten to a place at this point where I am confident in my gluten-free life. I eat safely. I do get glutened occasionally, like it's very, very difficult to be 100%, 100% all of the time, but I'm doing the best that I can, which is pretty darn good at this point. And I remember like how much heartache there was in the beginning. And I know that even with all of the resources that are available to people now, it's still pretty tricky to go safely and consistently gluten-free, because it turns out there's so much more to it than just don't eat bread or pasta, right? Like there's the emotions that come up around it, and there's the social interactions. And so I am here because I experienced all of that heartache, and I don't want anyone else to go through that. So I want to help you to step into a awesome and safe gluten-free life where you get to enjoy the food, enjoy your friends and family, and you just get to enjoy life. And gluten-free is a part of it, but it doesn't control you. So today's topic is about giving old favorite recipes new life in gluten-free form. And so I just want to say, like, I see some people here right now. So, drop me a hi, leave a comment, let me know how you're doing. I would love to hear what your weather is like on this gorgeous day. But yeah, so giving new life to old favorites. So there's a slight difference depending on whether you're talking about cooking or whether you're talking about baking, because on one level, yeah, both of them are about chemistry. I mean, that's what food prep of any kind is chemistry, right? But cooking, you can play a little bit more fast and loose with things. And baking, there's rules, and you really need to follow the rules. Otherwise, you end up with a brick or a puddle or something just completely disgusting. And you're like, I'm not eating that. Let's call for pizza. you know? So, with the cooking, um, take a look at your old recipes and see if you can identify which ingredients in the recipe call for gluten. And maybe, like if it's a simple swap, you can just do that. For example, a lot of times they call for wheat to thicken a sauce, like to make a roux. Well, did you know that you can make a roux with pretty much any flour? It doesn't have to be wheat flour. Or another example is using breadcrumbs. You can make gluten-free breadcrumbs. You can buy gluten-free breadcrumbs. I mean, it's just dried out bread that's crumbled, right? So take a look at the ingredients and see, like, the thing about substitutions is you kind of have to get a little bit creative, and you have to go in with an understanding that it's not going to taste exactly the same. You can get really darn close, but if you go like sometimes the food tastes exactly the same, you can't tell the difference. But if you go into it with the understanding that we're going to get close, but it won't be exactly the same, then that kind of eases up on the heartbreak a little bit, you know, because you're setting your expectations. It won't be the same, but it'll still be good, you know, that kind of thing. And the other thing to keep in mind also is that this kind of stuff takes practice and it takes experience. And the only way that you get experience is from practice. So you want to give yourself grace, understand that you're going to be experimenting a little bit, right? And that you might need to have a gluten-free pizza on the line or have a standby ready to go if things don't work out the first time. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're a failure or that you did anything wrong. It just means that you're in the process of learning. So I do want to remind you, to anyone who has not already signed up for my newsletter, that I do offer as a free gift for signing up with the newsletter, a gluten-free cooking substitutions guide. And that is my gift to you. So if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, I encourage you to do so. And you can leave me a comment down below, or you can go to my website, safelysated.com, and sign up there, and you can have that newsletter. And if you know, and like maybe you did sign up and you are getting my newsletter, but you haven't looked at the guide recently. So, you know, if this topic is of interest to you, you probably want to go and pull that out and take a look at it again. And it just offers like different ideas on the things that you can substitute in your cooking, like as a one-to-one ratio, or maybe, you know, like just use half as much flour. So if it calls for flour, you want to use half the amount of cornstarch or whatever, you know. And the great thing is that there's multiple options for all of these things. So if you can't have potatoes, don't use potatoes, use the corn or use the rice or use the tapioca. You know, there's a lot of different options out there, especially for cooking. And of course, with the number one hidden gluten is soy sauce. So if you know, if your recipe just calls for soy sauce, oh my gosh, get gluten-free soy sauce or tamari. I believe the brand is called La Choy, and they're naturally gluten-free. Or you can find tamari. Now, again, you know, you still need to read the ingredients on that, because they do sometimes make tamari with wheat in it as one of the ingredients, which is, it is what it is. But, you know, like there are options out there. Now, gluten-free baking is a whole other topic. And the reason is because baking requires a level of precision. Like you can kind of fudge things with cooking, but when it comes to baking, there is room for experimentation, but you still need to get your ratios correct. And we think about baking, especially when baking with wheat, as being this thing where, like, you know, like you can, as long as you have like this much flour and this much fat and this much sugar or whatever it is, then everything will work out. But so the thing about wheat flour is that there's a ratio of starch to protein, and every single grain out there has starch and protein in it. But the ratio is different. So when you start mixing gluten-free flours together, what you're trying to do is get that ratio pretty much to mimic wheat, right? You want a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. So that's half of the issue when it comes to mixing your own gluten-free flours. But the other part, excuse me, the other part is that different starches do different things when they get wet. Like any pie baker will tell you that some, like I think it's cornstarch, will leave your filling, if you use cornstarch to thicken your filling, it'll leave it kind of cloudy. And then I think it's arrowroot will leave it like really clear. But some of them you can freeze and some of them you can't freeze, because they all have different chemical makeups and they all react to getting wet differently. And sometimes you need to heat them, and sometimes, so you need to be aware that it's both about matching the protein to starch ratio, and about finding a starch that acts the way you want it to, right? So where does that leave you when it comes to remaking old recipes? Well, there's a couple of things. You can always buy different one-to-one flours and figure out which one, like I'm very lucky because my grocery store offers like 3 or 4 different brands. So I pick it up, I pick a different one and I try it with the cookies that I like to make. I love chocolate chip cookies. Like that's like my one recipe that I just go back to over and over again because chocolate chip cookies are the best. But but like, so I'll try it and say like, okay, does this kind of work in the recipes that I make, or does it end up gummy all the time? And then I'll try a different one and see, because like, it's not like there's one solution to replacing wheat. There's Bountifuls, all these different brands, they all have different chemical makeups, and they're using similar ingredients a lot of the times, but not always the same. And part of that is to just figure out how to replicate different aspects of. Oh my gosh, I am so sorry about that. I don't know what happened. My my picture just disappeared. I think I got disconnected. I'm so sorry. So anyway, so try different one-to-one flours if you have access to them. And what else? Sorry, I got completely derailed by technical difficulties. So yeah, and that's kind of it. So I do want to bring up one other thing. I got a question that I thought was really important. And so I wanted to share both the question and the answer with you. So I think it was yesterday, Catherine asked me, she said, I make all of my own food, but when it comes to gluten-free baking, it always flops. Nothing comes out right. And I hate mixing all of my own flours. What should I do? So if Catherine was someone who loved to bake, I would suggest choosing one gluten-free baker, following what they do. And because like a lot of times these bakers have a favorite brand, like GF Jules, not only did she design her own mix, but now she sells that. So all of her recipes are around the GF Jules one-to-one flour. And so, find a gluten-free baker that you like, follow them, do what they do, and just practice on getting good at what they do. And then once you kind of have that nailed down, you understand how things are supposed to feel, what they're supposed to look like, then you can move on to trying other bakers, right? And kind of expanding that way. But Catherine, the very first thing she said was that she doesn't like it. She doesn't actually enjoy baking. Well, then, honey, make that as simple as you possibly can. If you don't enjoy baking, I recommend picking up different pre-made mixes at your grocery store or online and trying them out. They have mixes for cookies and muffins and pancakes and cakes and all of these different, and bread. They do have gluten-free mixes for bread. So pick up a mix, try it out, see if you like it. If it doesn't work for you, try a different brand and kind of cycle through and try the different ones. And I know that that sounds expensive, but think about it. Like, that's what we've all had to do, right? And I'm not just saying gluten-free people, everybody. Now, we might have been raised on certain brands, but when we get out into the world, we realize, gosh, I really hate the bread that my mother used to buy for us for dinner all the time. And so you just go through and you start trying different brands until you find the one that you like. And you end up doing that with a lot of food. And we forget that because that was a while ago, and we're established now. And so we feel like we should just know what all our brands are. But really, you've got to start over again and just try out all the brands and find the one that you like And then there you go. Now you have a cake mix that you can just turn to, boom, done. And the beautiful thing about mixes is that they are designed to work well. They're designed to be dump and bake, right? So if you don't like baking, choose that. And I would like to point out that they do have vegan mixes, also gluten-free vegan mixes, and they do have gluten-free paleo mixes, and they do have gluten-free keto mixes, and they have AIP mixes out there. So if you're on a specific diet, or if there's something that you need to be avoiding and you find that one of those fad diets out there works for you, odds are good that they've got that out there. You might have to do a little digging, but it exists. Okay. So just keep that in mind, that there are options available. And if you don't enjoy baking, keep it as simple as possible. Right. Okay. So that is everything that I have for you today. I think that's all that I've got. So I hope that you have a fabulous rest of your Friday. I hope that you have a gorgeous weekend. I know that in Southern Oregon, it's supposed to be phenomenal. Like it's almost like a false summer. Like it's going to get really warm and then cool back down again overnight. Like really wild. But have a wonderful weekend. And I know that, let's see, Monday is May Day, so enjoy the lusty month of May and take care. And remember, eat good, feel good, and keep staying gluten-free. Keep reading your labels. All right, take care, everybody. Have a fabulous day.